The Great Awakening Report Connected Series Leadership Q&A for July 2025. Welcome, Truth Seekers, to another episode of the Great Awakening Report's Connected Series podcast. I'm Mark, publisher and editor of the Great Awakening Report, and your guide to this unfolding journey through the global shift in consciousness we all call the Great Awakening. This podcast is your anchor in a time of accelerated change, conscious awakening, and global transition. Each episode is designed to take you beyond the noise, connecting the dots across our platform from our in-depth monthly reports, True Seeker Weekly Briefings, and our Awakening Sleeping Giant. Our mission is clear: to cover the hidden forces, suppressed knowledge, and transformative energies driving this shift, and to provide grounded insights and clarity to help support your awakening, alignment, and evolution. Whether you're a longtime subscriber or finding us now, this is your space, a sanctuary for seekers of truth, wisdom, and higher consciousness. And as always, I'm honored to be joined today by my co-host, Craig Cook, a Renaissance man, truth seeker, spiritual pathfinder, and someone whose grounded insights and intuitive presence always brings a deeper layer to our conversations. Craig, welcome back. It's a pleasure to walk this path with you once again.
Thanks, Mark. I like that Renaissance man. That's that's a good one. That's a good one. I'll take it.
I found that. I thought that was fitting.
Thank you. Thank you.
So in today's episode, we're featuring our Connected Leadership Q&A series for the month of July 2025, crafted specifically for our GAR professional subscribers and our consulting group clients. These questions come directly from your collective insights, concerns, and observations as leaders navigating this extraordinary time of transformation, disruption, and awakening. They reflect the deeper themes emerging from your organization's leadership roles, communities, and personal journeys, and are grounded in the research and revelations featured in our Great Awakening reports. As we explore each question, we'll connect the dots, revealing how your inquiries fit into the broader global shift. From geopolitical challenges to economic breakdowns to professional recalibration and conscious evolution, this Q&A is designed to offer you multidimensional clarity, strategic awareness, and actionable insights. This isn't just about decoding current events. It's about empowering you to lead with greater sovereignty, vision, and alignment during the Great Awakening. Because when consciousness leaders seek truth together, we become catalysts for transformation, building a new system, anchoring unity consciousness, and creating a more awakened world. Let's dive in. These are your 10 most insightful questions, revealing answers to shared information and intention to be awakened, aligned, and to lead. Our title is The Modern Leadership of the 21st Century, Exploring Heart-Centered Leadership, Conscious Capitalism, and Awakening in the Modern Age. This first section is Awakening and Integrity in Leadership.
Well, I'll kick us off with the first question, Mark. And a question from the audience is, how can leaders remain in integrity while navigating systems that seem broken or corrupted?
Yeah, integrity is not about conforming to a system. It's about embodying a higher standard that transcends the limitations of that system. In today's world, many institutions and organizational frameworks are visibly outdated, misaligned, or morally compromised. For awakened leaders, the challenge is to remain anchored in the truth while operating in these structures, not to validate them, but to transform them from within. Remaining in integrity starts with radical self-honesty. Leadership must do their inner work to clarify their values, purpose, and vision, and then make decisions that are aligned with their inner compass. Even when it's inconvenient, unpopular, and disruptive, this requires deeper courage to speak truth in the boardrooms, governed by denial, or to choose transparency over an an image management, and then to walk away from opportunities that compromise one's ethical code.
Yeah, those are all really great points. I also think integrity means creating environments where authenticity is safe and also encouraged. Um, that can mean modeling vulnerability, acknowledging systemic flaws without being paralyzed by them, and then refusing to normalize dysfunction just because it's profitable or widely accepted. I think that's a trap that a lot of people fall into that are leading organizations or are part of leadership. But conscious leaders don't just challenge the system, they hold space for the emergence of a new one, kind of like what you were talking about earlier, that transformation. So, this is the essence of modern leadership in an awakening age to lead not from ego, control, or fear. That's that old, antiquated approach, 20th century, say, where this is again 21st century leadership that we're talking about. Uh, and this comes from presence, purpose, and principle. It's about staying grounded in who you are, helping others remember who they are too. And you can even consider it kind of like management alchemy. As we alchemize the system from within, every action taken in integrity becomes a ripple in a larger awakening. It's not about being perfect, it's about being real and being responsible and being willing to lead with soul in a world that desperately needs it.
Question number two: what does it mean to lead from higher frequency in today's business environment?
Yeah, that's a good one. My take, leading from a higher frequency involves embodying coherence and, that heart-mind coherent, clarity, really having conscious intent. So people understand where you're coming from. It's about also responding rather than reacting. Typically, the old lead by fear, they're always reacting, blowing up at the smallest things, right? Um, in our modern framework, it's about aligning decisions with your inner truth and staying attuned to compassion over fear. Yeah, I want to say that again, compassion over fear. That's just something that really goes a long way from my experience. And this doesn't mean avoiding challenge. It means moving through challenge with grace and elevated awareness and a commitment to transpersonal impact. It's not meant to be fluffy and soft. There's times when you have to be stern, and one can even argue that it's even more challenging to operate in this manner, especially if one is used to an older model of leading by fear. That's just kind of like an easy default. But with a higher frequency approach, you're not just managing tasks, you're stewarding energetic influence. And it just takes more um, say intention and compassion, and it can be more challenging for people, especially when it's newer to them. And leading from a higher frequency means showing up in leadership with elevated consciousness, emotional intelligence, and a deep commitment to alignment with yourself, your values, and the collective good of the organization. It's much less about traditional command and control and more about embodying presence and coherence and intention in every interaction and decision. Yeah, it should really become a natural part of the organizational culture. And when you have this level of leadership, you're no longer driven by reactive behavior or egoic power plays. Again, something so common in the 20th century model. Or, and also the short-term metrics, the quarterly, what's the quarterly results. Instead, you're going to be responding from a place of inner stillness and intuitive knowing. It's more of a long game too. And you pause before speaking, you listen deeply, you hold space for truth to emerge organically when you're dealing with others. And by having this frequency, it cultivates psychological safety, which is so important for people these days. And this can eventually foster innovation and draws out the full human potential of a team or organization.
That's very clear and very precise. I like that approach. Also leading from higher frequency doesn't mean avoiding conflict or bypassing difficult realities. It means engaging in those challenges with clarity, calm, and compassion, not fear. We all hold tension, and the secret is to hold tension without collapsing into it. You set boundaries without aggression. You speak truth without attachment to the outcome. In this space, leadership becomes energetic stewardship. Your presence itself becomes a tuning fork. I like that, influencing the
Mm.
field around you. And this shows your energy. Teams begin to mirror and your coherence, so they mirror back the energy that you're putting out. Culture shifts from survival mode to inspiration. Creativity flows more freely. Purpose sharpens in all those instances. So, this kind of leadership is deeply needed, and it's often deeply confronting because it challenges everything we've been taught about power. It requires personal evolution, healing old wounds, which is sometimes very difficult and very challenging work to do, releasing control, trusting in something greater than yourself. But the reward is transformative. You don't just lead better, you live better. I love that. and,
Yeah.
and in doing so, you elevate everyone around you, which is the secret. In today's chaotic, fast moving world, leading from a higher frequency isn't just aspirational, it's foundational to building the resilient, purpose driven, heart centered organizations the future demands.
That's really well said. I really like too what you said about the culture shifts from survival mode to inspiration. I mean,
Right.
that's so powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Well, the next question from our audience is it possible to be consciously awakened and still operate within corporate structures? And if so, how?
Yeah, yes. And the answer is yes. And it's essential. Conscious awakening does not require abandoning the world. It asks that we illuminate it, which is very interesting.
Hmm.
Operating within corporate structures as an awakened leader means becoming the subtle disruptor, not the visible or the violent disruptor, but the subtle, the subtle disruptor, and also the quiet transformer, which I really like the best.
Hmm.
That's how I see it. You influence culture through your presence. You shift narratives in meetings, and you create ripple effects of empathy, innovation, and integrity. You lead not by escaping the game, but by playing the game with a new playbook. And I love the playbook analogy. I think that's a really great way to describe it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And also, more than just possible, it's essential in this time of global transition. A conscious awakening does not demand that we reject or abandon the corporate world. Rather, it calls us to infuse it with light, wisdom, and humanity. Awakening is not about escaping the system, it's about transforming it from within. Operating within corporate structures as an awakened leader means becoming the living catalyst. You may not be tearing down the walls, but you're subtly redesigning the blueprints through your actions, values, and presence. Your leadership becomes a quiet revolution, one marked by deep listening, clear vision, and authentic connection. These are very strong words and very strong mental constructs that I think everybody needs to really kind of wrap your mind around. This kind of leadership doesn't make headlines, but it shifts people at their core. You influence the energy of meetings by grounding the space. You reframe problems, not just in terms of profit, but in terms of people and purpose. You bring heart into strategy and soul into systems. Whether it's mentoring a colleague or redesigning team culture or questioning outdated norms with curiosity instead of judgment, or your presence becomes a ripple that echoes beyond the boardroom.
Yeah, and it's not easy. Corporate structures that have been around for a very long time in older organizations, they often reward conformity, people playing it safe, speed and performance over depth and truth and process. But this new awakened leadership style that we're talking about invites you to navigate this terrain skillfully, remaining conscious and clear in environments that often distract and distort. So you eventually become a mirror for what's possible. Integrity amidst pressure, vision amidst chaos, and love amidst competition. I'd also say cooperation too, rather than competition. And perhaps most importantly, you don't do it alone. Awakened leaders begin to find each other. They connect beneath the surface and build networks of authenticity that nourish resilience and long-term change. And over time, these ripples form waves, and the system begins to shift, not through force, but through frequency. And you don't need to leave the game. You just need to play it with a new set of rules, quietly, powerfully, consciously. This is the 21st century way.
Well said. That's very important. Question number 4. How do I cultivate heart-centered leadership without being perceived as weak or naive?
This is a good one. I think this is, I say, is the trepidation people have, or the fear that people have when this topic comes up and they're not familiar with it. Like, well, how, right? Because they're so caught in the old paradigm. And let's think of it this way, that true strength flows from the heart. Heart-centered leadership is it's not about softness, it's about sovereign compassion. When it's rooted in clear boundaries, and by having clear boundaries, you need very clear and often communication that is frequent, clear and frequent. And there needs to be integrity and emotional mastery, and it creates trust and loyalty, especially over the long term. Leaders who lead from the heart while maintaining strategic clarity are often most influential because they embody both vision and humanity. Yeah, from my experience, I've seen where that more lead by fear, people want to hide things and they don't express their vision and they kind of keep things under their sleeve and they're not transparent with information. It's just so interesting. So this is just a totally opposite approach. Um, Leaders that are having this more heart-centered style, they have deep consideration for their team. They actually care about their team. And this means power with, not power over. That's really important. And people these days, they pick up on that really quick. And from my experience, a heart-centered leadership is one of the most misunderstood and underestimated forms of power. It's often confused with like emotional indulgence or passivity, but in truth, it requires extraordinary strength because sometimes it's not easy to maintain emotional intelligence in that inner sovereignty in high pressure situations. It takes a lot sometimes, and leading from the heart does not mean sacrificing any sort of discernment or strategy, any sort of strategic initiatives you have. It just means embodying compassion with boundaries, presence with precision, and empathy with clarity. The compassion thing is really important because when people see that you actually care about them, I'm talking about your team members, when they see that you actually care about them, then they care about you and the business more. They're more vested. They're more willing to step up and be a very strong team player to support whatever initiatives are at play. That's my experience. And with all this being said, to lead from the heart, is not with being seen as weak. You just need to redefine what strength looks like. It's just a new way of operating. It's not that old model of strength of dominance and control or stoicism. Stoicism is that the courage to be fully human, just in a world that often demands otherwise or expects otherwise. It's the ability to connect deeply with your team, while holding them accountable. This is where that strength comes in. It's not being soft. There's times when sternness does have to come in, but it's really about accountability and holding them accountable to their highest potential, because that's what you want to bring out in people. And it's offering grace while staying rooted in integrity and non-negotiable standards.
I want to restate something you said about, heart-centered leadership, means power with and not power over.
Yes.
It values collaboration, mutual respect, and shared purpose. It sees people not just as roles or resources, but as whole beings with dreams, fears, and gifts. These this creates the psychological safety, and that's really important. I'm going to say that again. Psychological safety builds loyalty, unlocks higher levels of performance, not through pressure, but through inspiration.
Yes.
At the same time, this approach is not naive, and that's really important. A heart-centered leader can say no with clarity, deliver hard truths with compassion, and make tough calls without losing connection. In fact, this balance between empathy and strength, humanity, and decisiveness is what sets conscious leaders apart from today's business world. The key is embodiment. When you are grounded in your own values, emotional, regulated, and consistent in your actions, Others begin to trust your leadership. That's a big word, trusting your leadership.
Yeah.
And regardless of whether your style fits traditional models, over time, heart centered leadership redefines what leadership looks like altogether. And in a world that's craving authenticity, coherence, and care, leading from the heart isn't just viable, it's visionary.
Yeah, really well said, Mark. That was just a really great question that came from the audience there. I just
Yeah.
love that one. Yeah, it's great. Well, let's keep it moving. Next question, question number 5 here. What role does emotional intelligence play in modern leadership, and how can it be scaled across an organization?
Yeah, this one's really interesting and it's also a little tricky. Emotional intelligence is the currency of conscious leadership.
I like that.
Yeah, currency of conscious leadership. It enhances trust, resilience, adaptability, and culture. This to scale emotional intelligence, it must be modeled at the top and embedded into hiring, training, and feedback loops. It's
Mm,
really important. So it's got to be kind of starting from the beginning or a groundswell, if you will, within the company. Conscious organizations prioritize empathy, transparency, and feedback over hierarchy and control. Really important that feedback over hierarchy and control.
yeah.
The result is a culture that evolves organically and thrives on collective coherence. Emotional intelligence is no longer a soft skill, it's an operating system for modern conscious leadership. In a world of rapid change, complexity, and human burnout, emotional intelligence is the currency that builds trust, unlocks collaboration, and sustains cultural integrity. Leaders with high emotional intelligence are not only more self aware, they are also better communicators, listeners, and facilitators of psychological safety.
Mm,
Now, at its core, emotional intelligence allows leaders to feel what's beneath the surface, to navigate interpersonal dynamics with clarity, and to lead from response rather than reaction. It strengthens resilience under pressure, enables more compassionate decision making, and supports healthy boundaries, all essential to high stakes and high impact environments. To scale emotional intelligence across an organization, it must begin at the top. Leadership must model self awareness, vulnerability, and emotional literacy, not as performance, but as a practice. Emotional intelligence can't be delegated or outsourced. And that's really important because right now everybody's outsourcing everything.
yeah.
They're trying to give it to everything, and the leadership just want to step back because they don't want any responsibility. But this
Right.
is this is really important. It must be embodied. It must and start from the top. The senior leaders normalize real conversations, emotional honesty, and constructive feedback. It signals permission for others to do the same.
Has so much good stuff. From there, I like to say there are some things that you hit on earlier. I'll just kind of restate it in a slightly different way that EQ, emotional intelligence, it's got to be woven into the organizational DNA. And that means rethinking, hiring practices, not just recruiting for skill sets, but for self-awareness and adaptability, team orientation, the values of a company, the brand culture, be really hiring for that and not just skill sets. And also designing onboarding and training programs that prioritize active listening and nonviolent communication, which could just be thought of too as verbal violence, right? Conflict transformation and mindful leadership. So, kind of like what you were talking about earlier. Just want to reiterate how important that is. And all this, it just means embedding emotional intelligence into the entire day, from day one all the way through the life of a team member, including performance reviews and coaching and metrics of success. And EQ doesn't replace strategy, it amplifies it. Organizations that foster emotional intelligence evolve faster. They retain top talent and create cultures of innovation and belonging. Rather than being held together by rigid rules or fear-based compliance, these workplaces thrive on trust, coherence, and shared vision. And that's been my experience, having getting best places to work 4 years in a row and really employing the stuff that we're talking about and at the same time achieving success, like monetary success at the same time. It just works better. It's a better way to operate. So when emotional intelligence is activated at every level, from the C-suite to the frontline teams, the whole organization itself just becomes more conscious, more human, and ultimately more effective. And that's been my experience.
Yeah, it's really fun that you won those awards for the best workplace. And I don't know whether it's California or the state or where, but anyway, those are really speak to your knowledge and information on these topics.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. It's Orange County. Yeah,
That's cool. All
yeah.
right, question number 6. How do I create a safe, empowering space for my team while still maintaining performance standards?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, psychological safety and performance are not opposites, they're codependent. So, safety enables risk taking or should enable risk taking, innovation, and accountability. And empowering space means creating clear agreements, fostering open dialogue, and recognizing both individual brilliance and collective mission. So, when people feel seen and supported, their performance becomes an extension of their purpose, not just compliance. And the idea that psychological safety and high performance are in tension is a false dichotomy. In truth, they're deeply intertwined. A safe, empowering environment isn't a luxury, it's a prerequisite for sustained excellence, also creativity and innovation. When people feel emotionally secure and valued and trusted, they show up fully and perform not out of fear or obligation, but from a place of ownership and purpose. And again, from experience, that's just so true. I've experienced that. Creating this kind of space begins with clear agreements and just not vague expectations. And vague expectations, people speculate. People speculate. They tend to go to the negative. It just is. But when there's clear agreements and people thrive when they know what's expected of them and they know what success looks like and they'll know how they'll be supported along the way. And safety doesn't mean a lack of structure by any means. It means clarity with compassion. And empowerment happens when leaders shift from controlling outcomes to cultivating environments where others can rise. And those outcomes just come about naturally. This includes fostering open, non-judgmental dialogue and encouraging questions and feedback and dissenting views and acknowledging both individual brilliance and collective contribution. And it's about creating a room for people to take healthy risks and fail forward and grow in real time. And I think that's where people could get kind of get a little spun out in fear is the dissenting views, and that's why this can actually it's a place of all this takes strength, to do. It's sometimes it's just not easy because we're just human, and it takes that strong emotional intelligence and all the things that we've been talking about.
That lays a great baseline. Maintaining high performance standards in this context is not about rigid enforcement. It's about alignment. When a team shared purpose is clear, compelling, people naturally want to give their best. Your role as a leader is to continually link performance goals back to values and vision. Not basically, you must hit this target or else, but here is your excellence has contributed to something very, very meaningful in our company. It also means being courageous enough to hold people accountable in a way that's firm but fair.
Yeah.
Challenging someone doesn't comprise safety when it's rooted in care and mutual respect. In fact, when delivered skillfully, feedback becomes one of the most empowering tools you have. When people feel seen and people feel heard and supported, they don't perform out of survival. They perform from a deep sense of belonging and inner drive. That's when performance becomes more than a matrix or a matrix. It becomes a reflection of alignment, shared vision, and empowered humanity.
Yeah, it's great. It's great stuff. Well, let's keep moving. We're getting on to another topic, which is energetic mastery. This is what I definitely like, a topic I like. So, question number 7 here. How can leaders manage their own energy during collective uncertainty and chaos?
Now, this is a new one for me. I just discovered this when we were doing some research for this conversation today. Energetic hygiene. Wow, that's powerful. That's some powerful stuff.
Yep.
Energetic hygiene is now a leadership competency. That's cool.
Yes.
what that's described as daily practices, breath work, meditation, grounding, intentional movement are essential for regulating the nervous system and staying attuned. Leaders must become stewards of their own frequency, able to discern what is theirs and what is the collective, which is not theirs. During times of chaos, your coherence becomes your credibility. That's a really cool statement. I like that.
Yes.
In the current, yeah, and also in the current global climate of rapid change, unpredictability, and emotional overload, leaders are being called to develop not just strategic resilience, but energetic sovereignty. Just
Mm.
think about that for a minute. Not strategic resilience, but energetic sovereignty. More than ever, managing your own energy is not a luxury. It's a leadership responsibility. How you show up energetically doesn't just affect you. It sets the emotional tone for the entire team, organization, and culture. Energy or energetic hygiene is the new leadership competency.
Mm.
This means consciously tending to your own nervous system, emotional state, and energetic field. And I'm going to say that again, energetic field. That means what's going on around you, what's being projected within 2 or 3 feet of you. It means recognizing that you're operating from stress, fear, or maybe even burnout, and knowing how to reset. That's another thing that we really get into. That's a whole nother discussion. But reset your emotions. Daily practices such as the breath work, the grounding, the meditation, intentional movement, and time in nature aren't just wellness tools, they're leadership tools. And that's really key that you understand that, make that connection. So they allow you to maintain presence, centered, and responsive rather than being reactive.
Yeah, I love that statement that they're leadership tools. And I really love the statement that energetic hygiene is the new leadership competency.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it really is good. It's just that's how important it is. So, it's really critical to develop the discernment between what is yours and what is the collective. That's that other thing you mentioned too, that something about, I think you said that energy is not a luxury, it's a responsibility, right?
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah. So, having that responsibility to know what's yours and what's more from the collective. And as a leader, you're constantly absorbing the unspoken emotions and expectations of those around you because there's always stuff coming at you. And if you don't have a practice for clearing, eliminating, grounding, protecting your own field, you'll unconsciously carry the weight of your environment and you eventually burn out. It's super important to purge all that stuff out of you. And especially during collective chaos, your coherence becomes your credibility. Teams don't just look to you for answers, they look to you for energetic regulation. And when there's a big storm, a big fire that comes in, if you're calm and grounded and heart connected, it gives others the subconscious permission to do the same. This is leadership by frequency, not just by function. And just think about it when a leader spins out of control, everyone else freaks out too, and they spin out of control. And then whatever the problem is, it's not going to get solved. It's just going to probably become exponentially harder on everybody. So it's important that thinking about leadership by frequency and it just helps normalize energetic self-care within your organization. And you should talk about it, model it, encourage others to create their own rituals for restoration because everyone's different. They'll have their own way and it'll build a culture where presence and performance are no longer at odds and where leaders are no longer running on empty. And that's important because leaders tend to not take care of themselves because they're doing everything for everybody else, right? So ultimately, the most impactful leaders of our time will not be the ones who knew all the answers, but the ones who could hold space for uncertainty and for transformation and for the birth of something entirely new.
I wanted to add to that, that fear basically shuts down the brain. It freezes your rational, critical, logical thinking, and also your creative space where you solve problems. And so, what's really important to what we're talking about here is that to understand what we're shifting and what we're moving away from is these reactions and moving into responses where we're patiently observing and looking and then waiting to respond in certain cases and also showing that we have as leaders, showing that we have confidence and showing that we will work through this problem. We will find a way to solve whatever we're up against. So that's why this is so important. I think the energetic hygiene is to really be the observer of what's going on with your thoughts. And I think that's at the core. And we talk about that in a whole different session, but it sure does align with this question number 7.
Yeah.
Okay, so question 8. What are the daily energetic or conscious practices of successful awakened leaders?
Yeah, this is great. So this is right up my alley. So successful awakened leaders often begin their day with some sort of program or practice. It could be with silence, intention setting, energy alignment. Includes certain practices as meditation, qigong. That's my jam, my go-to. Cold immersion or journaling. And actually, I do all these things, and they're all beneficial in their unique way. Also, unplugging from reactive media, all the mainstream news and just even other news, alternative news too, could just be reactive or social media. Just getting away from that at times and staying aligned to your inner guidance and checking in with your emotional body before we speak. And leaders that take this approach, they lead from a sense of being centered and balanced and allowing them to navigate the chaos of the professional world more effectively. And I've learned this firsthand because I was out of balance and uh, off-centered. And the practices like Qigong and meditation and journaling, they've all helped me get back to a sense of being centered and maintaining balance, especially when things get chaotic. Because the stress doesn't stop, the chaos doesn't stop. It still comes at you. It's about being able to function effectively amidst the chaos. It's mastery. And successful awakened leaders don't rely solely on intellect or strategy. They cultivate energetic mastery, right? And conscious presence as foundational pillars of their leadership. So their power comes not just from being what they do, but how they are. And that being is nourished through consistent, intentional daily practices designed to align mind, body, and spirit before stepping into the world. You have to have some sort of energetic hygiene practice. And when I do healing work on people, there's actual energetic hygiene practices, and that's what I call it, energetic hygiene, to make sure that I'm not taking on um, the emotions and thoughts and sickness that someone could have that I'm working on. Actually, I have to actually do energetic hygiene, and the same thing applies here with what we're talking about in the workplace and from a leadership standpoint. Most awakened leaders they like to begin their day in stillness. And, we talked about some of that stuff earlier, but it could also include prayer or just, simply sitting in silence, just quiescent meditation, creating space to listen. And, that allows you to listen to your own intuition and your emotional body and higher guidance. And it sets the tone for the day, being grounded in presence and heart-centered rather than rushed and reactive. So, there's all kinds of different things out there, but integrating movement practices such as Qigong, again, that's my go-to. Yoga is awesome. I have deep respect for yoga and Tai Chi. Tai Chi is very similar to Qigong, but it also has the martial applications, and it's super cool. Love Tai Chi. But even just mindful walks in nature, not necessarily to work out, but to move energy, to regulate the nervous system and stay connected to the intelligence of the body. Others may use tools like cold immersion and sauna or breath activation to sharpen focus and release emotional residue and also expand resilience. But there's all kinds of ways. Everyone's different. Certain practices are going to resonate more with others. So it's just really about finding your way and what to incorporate.
I want to add to this. We have a consciousness practices report we do every other month. And also, we break it down. The 3 primary practices are basically learning how to be the observer, which is of your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions. And then also the forgiveness and releasing practices, which I think are really key that, your mistakes or your problems or your issues, that we forgive others, we forgive ourselves. But most importantly, we release that energetically. And when we
Mm.
release that negative energy, a lot of the work that Craig, that you do, is releasing a lot of the stuff that people hold, and they that blocks their organs or certain areas of their body, and that becomes unhealthy. So part of this, healing process that you're talking about, and these practices, I should say, that we're talking about, is really being able to release that and having a tool to release those things, I think, in the moment. So then it returns you to that higher vibrational frequency. So you can kind of continue on in a positive way during your day. But another thing is journaling is another common practice used not just to process thoughts, but to clearly, to clarify the vision, reset intentions, and explore the inner dialogue. This daily reflection cultivates self awareness, helping leaders to stay aligned in their deeper why throughout the noise of the day, which is interesting. To stay
Mm.
aligned in their deeper why throughout the noise of the day. I'll
Yeah.
repeat that.
Yeah.
I thought that was an interesting phrase.
Yeah, it's
In,
good.
Importantly, successful awakened leaders are conscious curators of input. They are deliberate about what they consume. Now, this is really important because I think this is what the observer and what we teach and what we talk about, being the observer. Limiting exposure to reactive media, fear driven narratives, and overstimulation. Instead, they seek inspiration, nourishment, and silence. They prioritize conscious content, community, and conversations over noise and distraction. Before key meetings or conversations, they check in with their emotional state. Am I grounded? Am I triggered? Am I leading from ego or essence? This real time awareness allows them to respond with clarity and authenticity rather than from unconscious patterns. That's really key that you understand that. The
Mm.
unconscious patterns that we're all responding with or reacting with.
Yes.
Ultimately, these daily practices are not about perfection. That's really key. They're about alignment. They help leaders stay rooted in truth, adaptable in chaos, and energetically sovereign in environments that constantly pull for fragmentation. Now, that's a great, great way to put it. This is what allows them to lead with grace, purpose, and unwavering presence.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Energetically sovereign in environments that constantly pull for fragmentation. That's a really powerful statement. It's really
Yeah,
good, Mark.
yeah.
Okay, so on to our next topic title, which is visionary leadership. And question number 9. What qualities define a leader of the new earth or 5D awakened leadership paradigm?
This new earth leader embodies sovereignty, service, and spiritual clarity. They are both visionary, grounded, and strategic and surrendered. Surrendered is really an interesting word to kind of
Mm.
contemplate about this. Their leadership is multidimensional, impacting the material, the emotional, and the energetic realms. They prioritize harmony, regeneration, and truth. And so, all of the above, they lead by example, not just by direction. A leader of the new earth is not defined by title, authority, and status, but by frequency, consciousness, and embodied integrity. In the 5D awakened leadership paradigm, leadership is not about control, it's about coherence. It's not about commanding others, it's about attracting others. These leaders are bridges between worlds, rooted in the practical, yet fully attuned to the spiritual, emotional, and energetic dimensions of life. The New Earth leader embodies sovereignty. They are whole within themselves, unattached to external validation, and guided by inner truth. They lead from the inside out, making choices not out of fear or ambition, but from deep alignment with soul, service, and purpose. They also embody service and not martyrdom. Their leadership is devoted to the collective good and not just personal gain. They recognize that true power lies in uplifting others, restoring balance, creating regenerative systems where they can thrive. Their decisions are rooted in stewardship, not extraction.
Yes, and I'd like to add, spiritual clarity is another defining trait. These leaders are attuned to higher wisdom, yet not lost in abstraction. They're grounded in reality, but guided by intuition, inner knowing, and sacred timing. They listen deeply to others, to the earth, and to the subtle movements of energy and emotion. And it's important. There's a saying that you can't be so heavenly minded that you're no worldly good. So, we're talking about being grounded and having a practical approach here. And this leadership style is multidimensional, meaning that these types of leaders are aware of how every decision affects not just profits or metrics, but also people's emotional states, organizational energetics, because that is a thing, and even the planetary field. They know that everything is connected and they act accordingly. And these leaders prioritize harmony over hierarchy and regeneration over competition. I'd also would say cooperation too, and truth over convenience. And they're deeply honest with themselves and others. And they welcome feedback, honor diversity, and create containers where authenticity is celebrated. And most importantly, they lead by embodiment. Let me say that again. They lead by embodiment. They don't preach transformation, they become it, they live it, they walk it. They're calm in the chaos, they anchor in the storm, the light in the room. Their mere presence shifts the space, not because they say all the right things, but because they live what they speak. So a leader of the new earth is not here to win the old game, but they're here to help build a new one.
Yeah, that's really great. I like that. I like that a lot. All right, let's move on to question number 10. This is our last question. So, how do I lead my team through transformational change without creating fear or resistance?
Yeah, that's a great question because here's that fear and resistance angle coming up again, right? So let's just say that change without consciousness creates fear. So conscious leaders communicate transparently. They validate uncertainty. They paint a compelling vision of the future and they co-create the journey with their team. It's just not, dictating down from the top absolutes. They invite ownership and anchor transitions and values and purpose. And the key is to lead consciously and emotionally before you lead operationally. So this transformational change can either catalyze growth or trigger fear. It's a choice in how one operates. It's the difference lies in how it's led. Most resistance to change doesn't come from the change itself, but from how it's introduced and communicated and held. When it's delivered unconsciously without emotional awareness or clear intention, it often creates confusion and instability and fear because people speculate and then they go to the negative when they speculate and it creates all those emotions. But when change is led with presence and empathy and purpose, it becomes an invitation rather than a threat. So an awakened leader understands that change without consciousness creates fear. And that's why the emotional climate must be addressed before the logistical one. It's not enough to present a new strategy. You must hold space for the emotional and energetic realities that come with it. So we recommend begin by leading with transparency. Speak truthfully about what's changing, why it matters, and what's unknown. Avoid any sort of spin or sugarcoating. 'Cause people, they'll sniff that out. When people feel informed and it's honest, they feel included, and this transparency builds trust, even in the face of uncertainty.
And adding to that, we want to validate uncertainty and emotional responses. Don't rush to fix or dismiss discomfort. Instead, acknowledge it with empathy. It's normal to feel uncertainty right now, is a powerful statement that opens the hearts and reduces anxiety. When people feel seen and they're less likely to resist. I like that. When people feel seen, they're less likely to resist.
Yes.
Then paint a clear picture and a compelling vision of the future. This is shift them away from that they're in a kind of a negative spiral. Shift them back out of it. See the future. Help your team connect the dots between where they are now and where they're going. Anchor that vision in shared values and higher purpose, not just new matrix or KPIs, but people are willing to stretch when they understand the deeper meaning behind the movement. Co creating the journey. Now, I really like this one. Don't impose change, invite participation.
Mm.
Give your team agency in involving them in the process. Ask for their insights. Empower them to take ownership in the transformation. When people feel they're part of the story, they'll help you write the next chapter. which is that's a great one.
Yeah.
I love that one.
Yeah.
Finally, always remember you must lead consciously and emotionally before you lead operationally. The spreadsheets and roadmaps matter, but they follow the energy, not the other way around. When people feel grounded, heard, and aligned, the outer shifts can take root more easily. Transformational change isn't just about what you do, it's about who you become while you're doing it. When you show up with courage, compassion, and clarity, your team will too. Let's close this out with some final kind of notes and reflection. The leaders of the future are not simply CEOs or executives. They're energetic architects,
Mm.
truth tellers, and space holders for a more evolved human story. This is the age of embodiment, not theory. Your leadership is not measured in control, but in coherence, courage, and contribution.
I like that term, energetic architects. It's really
Yeah.
cool. There are a lot of good pearls of wisdom here in this episode. Very
Well,
cool. I like that.
we we
Well,
we did dig them out, that's for sure.
yeah, yeah. It's great. Energetic architects. I'm gonna use that
Yeah.
definitely for sure. It's a great one. Well, it's been a pleasure, Mark, exploring these questions in this special connected leadership Q&A. So again, as we move through this era of profound transformation, everyone remember true leadership isn't about having all the answers, but it's about showing up with presence and purpose and heart. So stay grounded, stay awake, and stay centered and balanced and keep leading from within. And most of all, keep leading the new way.
And I want to thank you, Craig, and also everyone for joining us today for this episode of Connected Leadership Q&A series. As always, it's an honor to walk alongside you in this path and decoding the truth, navigating transformation, and expanding our collective consciousness. We invite you to go deeper with us through our comprehensive reports, weekly briefings, companion media, and online courses, all designed to guide you and empower your awakening journey with clarity, purpose, and insight. Until we meet again, stay the course, stay aligned, and above all, keep connecting the dots.